Well, not too long ago, balance of power changed in the state of Virginia. So that raises the question, were the electoral victories in the state of Virginia something that can be replicated in other parts of the country? How was it done? At roughly around the same time, let's say circa 2017, many more women got involved in politics, starting with the Women's March, very broad wave and strong wave of women being both activists and electoral workers and running for office in unprecedented numbers. What can these two forces tell us? How can we better make use of them in the future? That, and how can we solidify and increase wins in states like Virginia? All that comes up in the context of an upcoming conference, a conference that is taking place next week as we record this on women in politics in the state of Virginia, a Women's Summit. And here to talk about that with us now is one of the organizers of that conference. Gelila Sebhatu is a Virginia and DC area activist. She is the founder of a group called the Arlington Huddle, and she is the organizer of one of the organizers, as I said, of this conference. So first of all, Gelila, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Secondly, tell us about this conference. What's it called? When is it? Who's going or who should go?
Yeah, so it is the 2019 Virginia Women's Summit. And it's been about 3 years. As you mentioned, 2017 was a really energizing moment. So we created this conference. It's been 3 years. And so it's about activists in Virginia to get together, to network, to educate, and kind of gain some leadership experience so that they can kind of take that to their local principalities.
So it's for people who want to get politically involved or are politically involved. So it sounds like it's part educational, part networking.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, we have guest speakers from a variety of different, levels, from like House delegates, Congress people. And then we also have workshops that they can kind of select based on their interests. And then we also have like parties and breakfasts and kind of some informal settings for people to kind of get to know each other. We really feel as if grassroots is really the compass for change. And so by us all getting together and networking and sharing resources, we can kind of move forward in some of our agendas. So it's next week, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, June 28th through June 30th in Hilton, McLean, Virginia.
So when I gave you an introduction and talked about and what's it called, by the way?
It's called the 2019 Virginia Women's Summit.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you said that. I had the name Nova in my head somewhere. Yeah. I guess that's Northern Virginia.
So
right?
if someone was interested in registering, they can go to www.networknova.org and they can register and attend the conference. And they're the people who are actually, putting this conference on.
Okay, Julia, I gave you I gave the conference a big plug going in that in some ways it sounds like a national model, something that could be a national model. Was I right, or was I overselling?
No, absolutely. I think, 2017, the victories that we had with the House delegate races really showed how grassroots organizations can do things on their own. And so I think it's a matter of, working with our group to kind of understand what is the model that we've put together. We've done that in Pennsylvania as well as Georgia. And so we're more than happy to kind of share that model. And it's basically the idea of identifying who are the grassroots organizations, who are the leaders, and creating a platform where we can meet and share ideas. And so if every state did that, that would be phenomenal.
So Virginia is a great example for me of this kind of activism because you guys had successes in Virginia, and because Virginia is a swing state, a kind of red to blue going on there, where you have parts of it that are still pretty deep south with all of that and what that brings to it. You have Northern Virginia, though. You have Richmond. You have different parts of the state. So it's a model of how to turn a red or pinkish state blue in that sense. So, and I've always loved the approach that says, and I'm always advocating for the approach that says, the best kind of politics is the politics that blends electoral politics with movement activism. So what kind of movements have gotten involved in the work you have been doing, and this group has been doing, and the attendees to this conference have been doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a two-pronged approach. So some organizations are really affiliated with like supporting certain campaigns in certain races, and then others are focusing more on, immigration, gerrymandering, the criminal justice system, breaking the school to prison pipeline. And so we have Swing Left, Indivisible. We have a variety of different organizations that are kind of putting their 2 cents in where they feel it's applicable and driving certain agendas. So that's what's kind of beautiful about the organic grassroots, is that it's not like we have to do everything the same way. We kind of all have our unique path to kind of hitting the same vision.
And again, we're talking with Gelila Sebhatu about the Virginia Women's Summit. Okay, so I'm gonna cause a little trouble here.
Sure, go for it.
Which is, I'm strongly in favor of increasing the representation of women in politics, but I'm also about overthrowing the political order, right? So you send me a Rashida Tlaib or an Ilhan Omar, or I mean, not send me personally, but you put forward an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, I'm there. I'm 1,000% there. On the other hand, you find that there's some groups that I would say support women, but only or lean towards what I would call establishment women. Right. And I know it's tough, because I know, like, if you're organizing in this space, you've got to like keep a foot in both camps, let's say. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is my personal thoughts as far as Gelila. I think we need to start looking at people who represent our values and represent, our interests as far as women. So whether you're a man having those interests or whether you're someone in the establishment, we really need to set people accountable and really push candidates forward. So whether it's someone who's a bartender or someone who's already been in office for 10 years, they really need to show and demonstrate that they're for our causes and they represent what we want for our future leaders and our future children in society. So I think that's where there's that balance, is not looking at it from a monolithic categorizing certain people, but more so as the individual. What are your values? What are you about? And holding them accountable to make sure that they do that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is, and I'm not the person to like represent the issue of, let's say, intersectionality, but to me, that's what intersectionality is. It's like, yes, I mean, the people who were, the collective who was pushing that were saying, we're women, we're people of color, we're working class, we're all of these things. And that, for example, to help the majority, my feeling personally, to help the majority of, let's say, women in this country, you also got to help the gender pay gap. You've also got to help the fact that we don't have adequate child care that's not affordable in this country. You've got to make sure everybody has medical care and real medical care, not skin in the game. But, I mean, this is just me. And it makes me unpopular in certain places. But I understand you're giving a seminar there, or a talk there too as well?
Yeah, we're actually doing a specific workshop. So during the summit, which is from June 28th through the 30th in McLean, we have a workshop that's called A Conversation About Racism in Everyday Life. And the point is kind of going to, I think what you were alluding to earlier, is saying, we need to have different people, we need to have different conversations. And so let's have an honest conversation about racism, systemic racism that's embedded in our institutions. So education, healthcare, job opportunities, the criminal justice system. And so looking at not just this being a Black person problem, but a society problem as a whole group, that's really where we want to go moving forward.
No, I love that. And I think it's so important. I'm not sure I've ever put it this way before, but I don't know what it's like to be a person of color in America, but I know what it's like to be a white person in America. I know what it's like to be a working class white person in America. So a lot of times when other people, even other white people, but maybe not from the working class, sometimes when coded language is used, I think that there are two groups of people who get it. People like me, and then the targets of it. So for example, when a politician in 2008 said about Barack Obama, it's not his turn, right?
Right.
Other people were saying to me, well, that's not racist. So I was saying, no, where I come from, that's racist.
Right.
Because where I come from, they're saying you know what, Ricky, they used to call me Ricky, those people want your dad's job. You know what I mean?
Right.
They want the job, they don't want to wait
They're
their
a
turn.
threat, right.
They don't want to, they think they're, you know what, I've been, my daddy had that job at the factory. I want that job at the factory. Now the factory jobs are all gone, but I still know what the language means. And so to me, when we talk about everyday racism, to me, the number one thing about it is it's real, and it really is every day.
Yeah, and I think the first step, just like anything, is acknowledging it, right? Acknowledging there's something there. I think we don't have enough honest conversations with our friends, with our colleagues, and so there's never going to be a change. If we're going to just accept the status quo and say, oh, this is sensitive, let's not talk about it, then nothing's going to happen. So we have to be uncomfortable, we have to have these conversations, and then we can slowly say, okay, now that these conversations will hopefully build into a movement that will affect, some legislation and politics, because a lot of the things regarding laws reaffirms these discrimination and reaffirm some of these racial systemic issues. So as grassroots organizers, and that's why I thought it was really important to have this at this workshop, is to say, okay, if you're activists, if you're saying that you're liberals who are about progressive and equality, then instead of walking the walk, let's, talking the talk, let's walk the walk. Show through action that you mean what you say, and this is kind of a great way to say, this is how you do it. This is how you can have an honest and direct conversation without offending anyone, without being defensive yourself. And so I think as a community that's wanting to be progressive, I think we can't neglect a huge demographic that supports the majority of our values. And so I think that's what's really important, is to make sure we get uncomfortable, we have these conversations, but we first have to acknowledge that there's something there. Let's address the elephant in the room and really kind of look at it square in the eye and talk about how are we going to move forward.
So, well said. And if there was one thing you wanted people to know about this conference that's coming up, what would it be?
So one, it's the 2019 Virginia Women's Summit. It's in McLean, Virginia, June 28th through the 30th. And I think whether you come to this conference or you go to a conference like it, it's always great to be rejuvenated with people who are like-minded. I think a lot of times people think, oh, I'm just one person, me voting or me, encouraging someone else to vote. You have no idea the power of your abilities and how much change you can have by that one movement and that one action. So I would just say, try to get involved in your local communities. Don't be scared. There are a lot of people who are interested in the same causes you are, and just put yourself out there.
Well, I was almost going to ask you another question, but I think you already answered it, which was, are you an optimist?
Absolutely. I'm definitely an optimist. I think if you're not, then you'll never have the foresight to think that change is possible. As an activist, we want to make sure that, everyone's living the same life that I had, so as far as the privileges that I had, going to school in Northern Virginia, having access to certain things, I think everyone should have those opportunities, whether it's healthcare, education. And so if I care that deeply about it, then I need to demonstrate that. And this is a great platform and a great way to do that.
Well, good for you. And I will encourage people to attend that if they're in the area and can make it, and be interested in seeing how you guys are doing at exporting this model as well. So Gelila Sebhatu, founder of Arlington Huddle, thanks so much for doing this, and thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.